Hi everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about vocabulary and developing your students' vocabulary. So why is vocabulary important? I think it's an obvious answer. Vocabulary is the basis of all language, right? Without vocabulary, we can't really do much else. And that includes develop our other skills. Without vocabulary, we can't really work on our reading or our listening, speaking, or our writing. So vocabulary is quite important to learn. There are several approaches to teaching and learning vocabulary. And I'll look at a few of those today. So the first is explicit and direct instruction. And this can be done contextually or discretely. So contextually means when I'm doing a reading or a listening, I'm teaching the vocabulary associated with that text. Discrete means I'm finding words that may not actually be connected to a text. We also have incidental learning, which is where we learn when we're reading a text. We come across a word we don't know, we can predict what it means, or we can look it up. And lastly is something we may neglect, which is our independent skills development. So getting students to actually take responsibility for learning themselves, right? So that they learn how to learn, basically. So today we're going to look a little bit at contextual. Now I'm not going to look too much because this is the one that I think most teachers use all the time. I'm going to be focusing more on discrete, or somewhat discrete, I guess I should say. And then we'll also look a little bit at independent skills development. How much time are you actually spending on vocabulary in your class, especially in relation to other skills and strategies that you're teaching? What I mean by that is, how much time are you spending on reading compared to vocabulary, or writing, listening, speaking, pronunciation, especially grammar? Because I find that what happens with a lot of teachers, myself included sometimes, is that we spend quite a lot of time on grammar and then don't really spend much time on vocabulary. Or we only teach vocabulary in that first way I talked about, contextually. So I want to recommend that we actually increase the amount of vocabulary that we're doing. And I want to recommend 5 to 10 minutes every day or every lesson. So this is not contextual teaching. This is in addition to that. So it's not about preparing for the reading and the writing and the listening, but it's in addition to that. So this could be done at the beginning or the end of class, and it becomes a routine. It becomes something expected by the student. So of course, when we're doing something like that, we have to have the words themselves. Teaching tools that we can use, and I highly recommend this first one, which is word cards. Word cards are really useful because they can be used for a lot of different activities. They can be used again and again and again by the students for review. And it really is a way for them to develop their independent skills. For teachers, I also recommend using PowerPoint slides that have the pictures. Now you can find pictures of almost anything online. It doesn't take long. Just do a quick search, pop it in there. And as long as you're teaching, you don't have to worry about copyright or anything like that. Student dictionaries are also very useful for students. When they find a word they don't know, they can put it in the dictionary and then later review. There's lots of activities you can actually do during that 5 to 10 minute period. So you can try games, quizzes, do some kind of writing activity, use worksheets, write a song maybe using them, or do some arts and crafts like making a small book or making a poster. So lots of things you can do in that time period. So where do I get my words? Where do I have the words that I'm going to use during that 5 to 10 minute period? I'd recommend starting with your table of contents, whatever series you're using. This comes from New World. So you can see that I highlighted a few things here. One is your scope and sequence. That will give you some idea about what the students are going to be learning during that time period. Look at the unit you're actually going over. Look at the picture dictionary if there is one that's available. And I think most importantly, go to that vocabulary list, because you do want to pick words that students are going to be expected to know. So we do want to pick things that are useful for them. So when I do look at my vocabulary list, we need to understand that all of these words are going to be taught in context at some point. But just decide what things you think are most important, which ones you want to have additional lessons in. Determine which ones you want to re-emphasize. You can see some word lists will actually have a few more or less detail. So here you can actually see there's expressions as well as parts of speech, useful expressions, all these kinds of things, even some idioms. So I'm going to look at Unit 5, and I'm just going to go through, and these are the words that I've determined that I want to actually use. These are going to be my new words for this week's word list. So I'm going to select my new words. I'm going to select some review words. I usually like to do a 40-60 split. So 40% of the words are going to be review, 60% will be new. And I'll actually be using this word list in another video on creativity that you can also watch. So I'm going to create this list. I want to make sure my students have this list. Also, if I'm working with parents, I want to make sure parents have this list as well. You can do all of this actually at the beginning of the year, so parents and students know what's expected of them throughout the whole term or year. If you do have a picture dictionary, it can be really useful for helping you to create these word cards. So here's the words that I came up with. So you can see that I did my 60-40 split. I have about 60% new words, and they're all in blue. And then these words are my review words in green. So this is what I'm going to do for a whole week. All my vocabulary activities are going to center around these words. So here's what my typical week might look like. So on Monday, I'm going to use those word cards, and we're going to play some matching games. So matching games can be showing a picture and finding the appropriate word, or putting the meaning of a word down and finding the appropriate word, or putting the word down and getting students to come up with some appropriate sentence, something like that. Or even matching different students with other students, right? So some kind of matching activity. They're just gaining familiarity with that word. Tuesday, I'm going to do a spelling quiz. And I'm going to grade the spelling quiz. Now, I'm not going to grade all of my activities. Some days I'm going to grade, some days I'm not. Wednesday, a worksheet, fill in the blank. Thursday, create a poster using at least 4 of the words. And you can leave this open to the students how they want to do it. But again, keep it to 5 to 10 minutes. On Friday is when I'm going to issue my new word list for the next week. On Friday I may want to do another quiz as well, or some kind of activity like that. So on this day you may get students to create the word cards or maybe write in their student dictionary. So that's all that I have for my vocabulary lesson. I hope that's useful for you. And do please look at the creativity video, because that one will have more on vocabulary activities. Thank you.